Hi, I'm Alexandra Korshin, and this is the Arizona Battery for Communication Disorders of Dementia, a handy guide. The Arizona Battery for Communication Disorders of Dementia, known as the ABCD, was created by Catherine A. Bales and Cheryl K. Tomoeda in 1993. The test was created to screen and assess Alzheimer's dementia patients by evaluating mental status, verbal episodic memory, visual spatial construction, and linguistic expression and comprehension. As all of these components can be impaired in adults with brain injuries, the ABCD has a secondary function of serving this population as well. Standardization. In order to standardize the ABCD, 272 people were recruited from Tucson, Arizona and the surrounding area. Of those 272 people, 86 had Alzheimer's dementia, which I will refer to as AD. 86 were people matched in age to those with AD, but with no impairments to serve as a control group. 8 people had demented Parkinson's, 62 had non-demented Parkinson's, and there were also 30 young normals who served as a control group for those with head injuries. All subjects were Caucasian native English speakers, were literate, and had adequate hearing and vision. All were screened and deemed not to have depression, which can affect ABCD test scores. The ABCD has two kinds of validity, construct validity and concurrent validity. For construct validity, the ABCD subtests were analyzed using a dissimilarity matrix, which was then displayed on a 3-dimensional graph, a 2-dimensional graph, as well as a cluster analysis table. The matrix calculated and displayed how similar or dissimilar each subtest was to each other, and it is considered valid in screening undiagnosed people and evidence for dementia as well as assessing the severity of dementia. The story retelling subtest was not included in these calculations as their results were little in variability. The concurrent validity was established by comparing the performance results of the 50 AD subjects to their performance results for 3 similar and established measures, which are listed on this PowerPoint. Performances were expectedly similar on all tests, and ABCD was deemed to have high concurrent validity. The ABCD has both test-retest and internal consistency reliability. In order to find test-retest reliability, 20 of the 50 AD subjects were retested a week after the initial examination date. Subjects with impaired memory were expected to have scores similar the second time around to their original scores, and those with unimpaired memory were expected to improve via the learning factor. As both results occurred, the ABCD displays a high test-retest reliability. For internal consistency, the test makers looked to find the standard error of measure in 2 ways. First, data from all 50 AD patients were used and computed in Cronbach's alpha. Then, Cronbach's alpha was reduced to the Cooter-Richardson formula for all of the dichotomous or yes-no answers. These 2 formulas defined a plus-minus 1.96 standard error of measure. Administration. It's simple. The test administrator should record basic information, such as the examinee's name, birth date, date of the exam, and the name of the administrator. Then he or she should administrate the initial screenings to account for any problems that could affect testing. The following subtests should then be administered in the order by which they come in the manual. Each subtest has its own set of explicit instructions, but one thing is true for every subtest. If it is in bold, the administrator says it aloud. There are 4 initial screenings, followed by 14 subtests, to account for basic hearing and vision. The screenings are the speech discrimination screening task, visual perception and literacy task, visual field screening task, and the visual agnosia screening task. The 14 subtests assesses one of the 4 general components: mental status, verbal episodic memory, visual spatial construction, and linguistic expression and comprehension. These are the subtests. Mental status, in which you ask general and personal questions. Story retelling immediate, in which you tell a story and have the subject tell it back in their own words. Following commands, in which you give the subject easy 1 to 3 step commands, like touch your nose. There's the comparative questions subtest, in which the subject answers yes or no to comparative questions, like is ice colder than water? There's word learning, in which the subject looks at words and indicates certain ones when prompted. There's repetition, in which the subject repeats nonsensical phrases of controlled length. There's object description, in which the subject must describe an object. There's the reading comprehension subtest, in which the subject will read words and point to their corresponding pictures. There's the generative naming semantic category subtest, in which the subject will be given a category, like types of toothpaste, and will name items in said category. There's the confrontation naming subtest, in which subject is shown pictures and must indicate what the pictures illustrate. There's concept definition, in which the subject is shown a word and has to define it, like broom is a household tool that sweeps up dirt. There's the generative drawing, in which the subject must draw according to a verbal prompt, and then there's figure copying, in which the subject copies a drawing. And finally, there's the storytelling delayed subtest, in which the subject is asked to retell the story that the administrator told in subtest number 1. Scores. As for scores, there are raw scores for every subtest. They can be interpreted into standard scores, which are referred to as summary scores for interest comparison, construct scores, which are the average of the summary scores, and total overall scores, which are the average of the construct scores. As all three types are measured from 1 to 5. Standard deviation appears on select graphs in the test manual as well. Based on my review, the ABCD is a valid measure to assess linguistic and cognitive deficits in Alzheimer's dementia patients. I also believe that it can measure mental status of adults with brain injury, but as validity, reliability, and scoring focused mainly on AD patients, I wouldn't use the ABCD as an exclusive measure for those individuals. In administering the ABCD, please keep in mind that it can measure the level of performance of the subject, but not the kind of performance. Also, poor performance on a patient's part could also be due to apraxia or depression, and the ABCD does not provide screenings for such conditions. And with that, I close my presentation for the Arizona Battery of Communication Disorders of Dementia measure. I hope this was helpful and informative. Thank you.